Hello, Florence. Welcome back to Grammy's channel. Let's do chapter 30 and see what's going to happen in this crazy situation. Laughing gas was once fairly popular among doctors, but the invention of proper anesthetics made it almost as unfashionable as chloroform and leeches. It was imprecise and fairly dangerous. Have you ever laughed so hard your sides hurt until you can't breathe or speak and you feel weak and helpless, but you can't stop? Well, that was what was about to happen to the Swifts. They wouldn't stop laughing until they stopped for good. They would laugh themselves to death. Before that would also be a fair amount of wheezing, coughing, tightness of the chest, bluish extremities, hallucinations, and a sprinkling of heart attacks, but laughing themselves to death sounded a lot cleaner. And so that is what Candor told Shenanigan what would happen. They'll laugh themselves to death? Yep. They'll run away. No, they won't. They're having too much fun. By the time they realize they're in danger, they'll be too weak to move. Never mind break down a door. I've locked them all in, you see. And once everyone is dead, well, I'll be the sole survivor of a terrible tragedy. There are plenty of other Swifts around, but I doubt anyone will ever want the job of patriarch. I can take this house apart, brick by brick, until I find my treasure. Shenanigan stared at the dark hulk of the house, the tower pointing to the sky like a rhinoceros's horn. How can you restore the family to glory if everyone is dead? His smile was patronizing. Shenanigan, don't be silly. What happens to the people in a family doesn't matter as long as the name endures. You've got it the wrong way around, she thought. What if I helped you find the hoard? Candor snorted. You don't even know where it is. A ghost gave me a clue. Hand me the map. Candor stared hard at her. Shenanigan wondered if he knew the same trick she did about spotting lies. He knew the trick to telling them, after all. He studied her eyebrows, her ears, the corner of her mouth, looking for somewhere a light might hide. But of course, Shenanigan didn't lie. He handed her the map, and Shenanigan scanned the familiar paper for something that might fix the Eek's clue. Fit its clue. Under house covered a lot of space. I think I have an idea, but I won't tell you. Candor waved his pistol at Shenanigan, and she corrected. I won't tell you here. I'll show you. Candor gestured for her to move, but Shenanigan paused, looking down at Daisy, still crumpled on the ground. The cut on the side of her head seemed to have stopped bleeding, at least. Oh, she'll be fine, Candor said, following her gaze. Trust me, I'm a doctor. They wound back through the hedge maze. In truth, Shenanigan had no plan. She felt the gun barrel pointed at her back as if in an accusation. With every turn, she tried to trick herself into coming up with an idea that would solve everything. Left. She could dart away, run back to the house, and warn everyone. Right. But she had no guarantee her family would listen to her. Left. She could take the gun from Candor somehow and force him back to the house. Left. The gun was in his hand. It would be very difficult for him to part from it. Right. She could cut his hand off. Left, right, left. They soon emerged from the maze, but as they crossed the lawn, Shenanigan felt as if she were still trapped by towering walls and dead ends, searching for an escape. Left, right, left. So, where are we off to? Candor asked jovially. The ghost said to look under a house, so the treasure must be in the cellar, said Shenanigan. I have an idea where, but if I tell you, you might shoot me. Candor laughed. The cellar? I was going to start at the top and work down, so this saves me loads of time. You're very clever, you know. Are you sure you wouldn't like to join me? You'd make a great accomplice. Goodness knows you've got a name for it. Shenanigan didn't answer. Really, it's not fair that your parents get to travel all over the globe while you're stuck at home playing dress up with your sisters. You could be a real adventurer, sail the seas, see the world. Shenanigan felt a pang. She would like to see the world. A part of her, maybe the part that gave her her name, seriously considered Cander's offer, but only for a moment. She led him past the lighted windows of the house, peering inside as slyly as she could. No one was giggling yet, but they were still singing. Aunt Dither and the poker players were taking turns sliding down the banister. Aunt Jilt had a bottle of champagne in each hand. Uncle Ferrier swayed to gramophone music with a cushion as his dance partner. The tin bathtub sat in the middle of the hall, half filled with water and the other half filled with cook. Her hands were bound and she had an apple in her mouth. Everyone seemed to have forgotten about her. We're going to have to sneak inside, Shenanigan said, to get to the cellar. Cander snatched Shenanigan's map and consulted it briefly. Nice try, but there's an outer door. We'll use that. He prodded her past a line of windows to the rear of the house and a weathered door set at an angle into the wall. He jingled Aunt Schadenfreuder's keys at her. Shenanigan hated him. Cander unlocked the door, and they looked down into the roiling dark. Shenanigan wondered if she could dive in before Cander could. But no, he must have seen her getting ready to spring because he seized her by the arm and marched her down the steps. Only days had passed since Shenanigan had last been in the cellar, but it felt as if it were at least 3 birthdays that had come and gone since. That is the difficult part of growing up. It doesn't happen within the clear boundaries or landmarks set for it. Growing up happens whenever it wants to. It fits and starts all over the place. Parts of Shenanigan had grown up a little since the last time she was in the cellar, but all at different rates, and she felt lopsided and clumsy. Before she had seen the cellar as an adventure. Now she was grown up enough to be afraid. Cander handed Shenanigan a small torch and gave a low whistle as she shone it about. Darkness scurried back behind the shelves. The cellar was vast, and without Felicity's help, Shenanigan had only the vaguest idea where she was going. She made turns at random, trusting her feet as she had in the hedge maze, looking for an opportunity to dart off. But Cander had hold of her arm and wasn't as easily fooled as their relatives. When she sagged in his grasp, his other hand poked her in the forehead, and she felt the barrel of the gun just between the bend of his fingers. This pistol is only big enough to fire a very small bullet, he said. Luckily, you're a very small person. Don't try that again. Above her head, she heard the murmurs of her family singing and arguing, the creak and thump of stamping feet on the floorboards. The noise that had soaked into the house so uncomfortably over the past few days was now oddly comforting, a reminder of life. Shenanigan led Cander past D and G's and P's and Q's, round and round the R's and O's, through the Z's, squeezed against the wall by the E's. Cander kept pace, though she could feel his irritation in the grip of her arm, and somewhere around the F's he stopped. Listen, he said. As she strained her ears, Shenanigan heard a few scattered giggles. You can take as long as you want to lead me where we're going. I really don't mind, said Cander, but they don't have that much time left. She heard the first chuckle a few minutes later. She hoped it was just her imagination, but then another drifted through the dark, and then another. The singing above her head had gone off key. She walked faster, almost dragging Cander behind her, but he soon halted her again, directing her gaze to a tall shelf. Look, he said, there's me. Shenanigan pointed her torch, and sure enough, there was his stone sandwiched between cameo and cannonade. Candor, noun, openness, honesty, truthfulness, having the quality of openness, honest and truthful. Shenanigan didn't bother to read the rest. Maybe the naming was all rubbish, after all, she thought. Some people acted the way they were expected to, and some didn't. Flora and Fauna's name didn't mean anything, really, other than that they were a matching set, and they were as different in personality as two people could be. Aunt Schadenfreude hadn't enjoyed seeing her family suffer. And while atrocious was atrocious, and Phenomena loved science, here was Candor, liar, murderer, thief, an all-around terrible person, someone who, if there was such a thing as destiny, should have been named scoundrel or scum. But words had many meanings, and some of them contradicted one another. She read the gravestone again. Brilliance, brightness, candor like candle, candor like incandescent, which meant bright, but also furious. Candor was charming, and he flashed his teeth and told his jokes, and all that light and brightness blinded people to what was underneath, which was something white hot and burning. There were many meanings to a name and many definitions to a word, and all the words and meanings link into one another like strands of a web. And if you could pick which strand to follow, which version of yourself to become, Candor had picked the very worst. Giggles bubbled through the floorboards above. Here and there a chuckle or a snort would fizz up and dissolve. Shenanigan pushed on through the cellar, no longer even really looking where she was going. She thought back to the night she and her sisters had cracked her stone in half, and although it had been an accident, she was suddenly and viciously glad it had happened. Whether Shenanigan was the way she was through nature, as Aunt Schadenfreude had said, or nurture, as Phenomena supposed, or some combination of the two, it didn't matter. Shenanigan was who she was. It was nice to know that, even if, she thought of the gun at her back, it wasn't for very much longer. When she looked up, she was standing in the H's. Here, she said. She stood back. Candor swung his torch about, frowning. Here? I don't see a here. No, there. Shenanigan pointed at one of the stones low on the shelf and older than the others. House, noun. 1, a place of abode, a dwelling. 2, a family, royal or of noble lineage. Look under House, she said. We have a relative called House? No, but the house is a member of the family all the same, and houses die. She rubbed a thumb against the crumbling wall of the cellar. You wouldn't get it. Candor looked as if he wanted to argue, but he had more pressing concerns. There's no way a treasure the size of vials could fit behind here or there. You're lying to me. Shenanigan shrugged. That's what the ghost said, she replied. Maybe it contains instructions, something to help you find it. All she needed was for him to be distracted just for a second. Candor braced himself against the gravestone. Yes, he was stronger than he looked, but the stone was much, much heavier than the bust he had used on Gumshoe. Millimeter by millimeter, he began to slide it off the shelf. Shenanigan watched, tense, as the balance shifted and Candor began to take the weight of the stone. It began to tip into his arms, and he stepped back. Shenanigan kicked him hard in the ankle. He dropped the stone and screamed as it landed with a crunch on his foot. In that brief fracture of time, Shenanigan fled. Something whizzed past her ear. She heard a curse and then another clink as Candor raised the gun again. But bullets very famously do not go round corners. If Shenanigan could only get to a turning, she'd be safe. Just as she reached a crossroads where H branched into L on the one side and W on the other, two shapes materialized out of the W branch with a torch bobbing between them. It was too late to stop, and Shenanigan ran smack into the chest of the taller one. who hissed, "Ow, Shenanigan, you clump!" Shenanigan would recognize her sister's annoying voice anywhere. "Felicity!" she cried, and to the second figure, "Phenomena!" She heard dragging steps behind her. She tried to push her sisters back around the corner, but they wouldn't move. "Turn off the torch! What are you doing here?" Phenomena straightened up. Shenanigan could hear her blushing. "Felicity said you were in trouble, and oh, fine, I had a hunch," she said in disgust, "and I don't feel very good about it, so don't tease me or I'll—" A hand buried itself in Shenanigan's hair, dragging her back down the corridor. "Run!" she yelled through the pain. It was 10 times worse than having her curls combed. She could feel individual hairs popping free of her scalp. She didn't scream. She refused to scream, but Felicity did, high and piercing, and the sound cut momentarily through the laughter from upstairs. Then Candor pressed the hand with the gun into the side of Shenanigan's head. "Quiet!" he spat. Felicity stopped screaming, confused. "Or you'll what? Poke her in the eye?" "Gun," Shenanigan said through gritted teeth, and she heard Phenomena, who had been working on this equation since the night of Aunt Schadenfreude's fall, finally come up with the right answer. "Pamplemouse's palm pistol," she whispered. "It was you." "Stop prattling and let me think," Candor hissed again. "You stupid, silly, nosy girls." Shenanigan could feel him shaking, and for a smug, soaring moment, she thought he was scared. Then she saw his fist, balled tight and white with tension around the livid scratches John the cat had left, and knew it wasn't fear, but rage. "Here's an idea. Take me Felicity. "Here's an idea. Take me hostage instead," said Felicity, stepping forward. "Shenanigan's the most annoying pest on earth. Believe me, you don't want to be stuck with her." "Shut up, Felicity!" he screamed. Felicity's torch shone full on his face, and now finally the candor the girls thought they knew had been burned away. Shenanigan squeezed her eyes tight. "Please don't shoot my sister," whispered Felicity. Thump, thump, thump. A light appeared to Felicity's left. Someone was coming. "Who's there?" called Candor. His furious expression didn't change, but his voice instantly became friendlier. "Oh, so who's there?" More cheerful. It was awful. Thump, thump, thump. The hair on Shenanigan's arms prickled. She recognized that noise. She saw from the whites of Felicity's and Phenomena's eyes that they did too. Felicity clutched Phenomena's hand. Thump, thump, thump. A light lanced through the spaces in the shelves. They began to hear another sound along with the thumping, a scrape of someone shuffling their feet. "I said, who's there?" called Candor. Heavy, labored breath. From around a corner, a lantern appeared, held aloft by a white arm, a white shape, hunched and familiar, covered head to foot in a ragged white veil. With every step, its walking stick thumped on the stone floor. Shenanigan felt Candor begin to tremble. "Show yourself!" he cried. The figure halted, almost luminous in the dark. Slowly, it pulled the veil from its face. Candor screamed as the ghost of Aunt Schadenfreude raised one withered arm and pointed to him in accusation. His hands fell from Shenanigan, suddenly slack with fear. He backed away, shaking his head. "No, no, no, no!" Aunt Schadenfreude's ghost stepped forward. "Candor," it wheezed. Candor's back hit the shelf behind him. Shenanigan would never really be sure if the missing stone had unbalanced the others, or even Phenomena wouldn't be able to tell her. But whether it was destiny, coincidence, karma, or simple physics, the shelf tipped over. There wasn't time to steady it. Shenanigan barely had time to leap out of the way as the shelves around Candor fell like dominoes, spilling rock and dust and crushing him beneath. What do you think? I can't imagine him surviving that. I think it's a perfect spot to end. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to see how this all wraps up. All right. Kisses for the birthday girl. Until we read again.